This is a pawn. This is a pawn on steroids. Get the pawn on steroids. Put those back. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Malik Young Puck Dotting inside my chest, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my video. So I do have the round 4 game between Wesley So and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, also known as Shaq. They just use the first 4 letters of the name. Call him Shaq. But for all my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking mga kaibigan? Maganang pon. Almasal tayo. Maglunch na tayo. Whenever you see this video, maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking video, aking mga kaibigan. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Mabuting pagbati, ingat lagi. Hopefully everybody is doing well. Anybody who is coming from Azerbaijan, I will say salam and chak sagol. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my video. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. Make sure we got this. Ooh, that's high. Just do 32. That's good. Okay. So we do have E4, E5, and then we have F4. So we have the King's Gambit. Nah, but I mean, this resembles the King's Gambit. So we're just going to go with that. We'll just call it a King's Gambit. We have D6. Knight comes to B3. We see Queen to E7. We got C4. F6. So black is just adopting to try to, like, set up a really, solid structure. And for those of you that are familiar with the Slav, Slav, it kind of similar to, the type of idea with that. Just basically making sure that you have like a very, very solid pawn front. And you're trying not to create any weaknesses. So you got this like big V going on right here. So we got D4. White is saying, I'm just breaking all of that up, man. We're not going to have all of that in this game. So pawn takes F4. We see queen takes F4. Knight comes to B6. We have bishop to D3. We got C5. And we have queen back down to D2. Now, in this position, it is very legitimate to actually push D5 and just, kind of just put these pawns just in the throat of black. And it is going to kind of somewhat nullify this bishop. You always have the ability, once you move this queen, of course, to kind of push this pawn and get some attacks rolling on this side of the board. So you never know. But like I said, we did see queen down to D2. You see pawn takes D4, and then you do have knight to A5. You do have a lot of pressure on this pawn now, with the rook and the knight and the bishop and stuff like that. So you do have to go into a defensive mode. So knight comes to A5. We see knight down to A4. And then we just see, we see knight to F3. Now, what we do actually have the possibility of playing immediately in this position for white is actually bishop takes D4. And this is pretty much just getting your pawn back. Knight would come to C5 and then bishop down to B1. And like I said, I mean, you just got your pawn back. And so, I mean, it's legit. So anyway, going from what we had, we did see knight to A4. Knight came to F3. So Wesley So just preferred to, like, kind of double hit this pawn before he took back. We saw knight to C5. We see knight takes D4. We got bishop to E6. This position is pretty dicey. I mean, if you can possibly, let's say, take on E6, deflect his queen away, you might have some knight to B7 checks. You can always just move the bishop out of the way. This is somewhat of a threat, so you do maybe want to kind of defend against that. And this does open up the queen as well. Something like that. You see that queen is a little bit more open against the king. We do have what is called long castles. It's kind of weird because, both pieces just move one square, but this is considered the queen side castle. We see bishop to G4. Bishop comes down to E2, covering the rook. Bishop takes E2, queen takes E2, and then we do have G6. Black is thinking that, maybe it's possible for the knight to come into F5. There is not a light squared bishop anymore for black. So, I mean, this is definitely a weak square. So, I mean, G6 kind of makes a little bit of sense, but unfortunately in this particular position, this actually gives white a really, really nice move. So if you want to pause the video and see what white can play in this position and what white does play in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So, some of you guys, I'm not sure how many people would actually like notice this move. It was actually kind of surprising to me. I wonder if I would have caught it myself in the game. But, I mean, you guys probably do notice that you do have a lot of firepower on this C6 square. But it doesn't really seem like you can move a piece there. Now, thinking about that by itself, it doesn't really seem possible. But if you think about it, if you were to remove this knight from this file, this pawn would be pinned. And then this bishop can activate itself and take on c5. So if you thought about all of that together, then you would be coming up with the move knight d to c6 with check. And this is a very dangerous check. Of course, you're not going to want to take back with the rook. Because, I mean, you're going to be getting the rook taken, and you're going to be winning this knight, so you're actually just going to be winning the exchange. So after knight d to c6 with check, you actually see pawn takes c6, and then this does allow you to get your, your piece back. Like I said, this bishop and this rook are, doing some really nice jobs here, and this pawn is actually pinned. But if we actually backed up, after queen takes e2, instead of actually g6, it is actually legitimate just to take the pawn here on e4. I mean, there's not really anything wrong with it. You just kind of get your pawn, black is actually up a pawn. So after queen takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes b7 with check, king comes down to d7, you see b3, knight comes down to c3, and it's just a minor inconvenience. You got to move your knight out the way. So, it's a pretty active position for black. I mean, it's definitely not bad. So, like I said, getting back to what we had, we did after bishop takes c5, we do see queen to e6, and then queen comes to e3. We're just throwing a little tickle on this this pawn over here because it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary to have to move the bishop out of the way because, like I said, I mean the piece is pinned. Or the pawn is pinned. So, I mean, you're not worried about the bishop being swept off the board. So, bishop comes to c7. Now, we kind of have an issue with our knight. But knight does take on c6 with check. King comes down to d7. And then we have the very, very sneaky queen to b3. And it might look like this knight is hanging. You're like, wait a minute. Isn't that just a knight? No. Because this is a box checkmate if you do take that knight. So, of course, if you were to take the knight, thinking, hey, man, I got some material, you'd be very, very sad after queen to b5 with checkmate. And this should look pretty similar, pretty common to you guys. This rook is covering this way. But if, like, you took this bishop away, this is a very typical, like, checkmate with, the queen kind of boxing the king in there. So, like I said, queen did come to b3. And black recognized that they were in some danger, so they went bishop to b6. And then so we see knight down to d4, getting a nice tempo on the queen. After the queen takes on e4, we see bishop takes b6, pawn takes b6, rook h to e1. And this is actually very sad for black to have to deal with because, you have this rook on a really nice file. You're getting a nice tempo on his queen. This rook is opposite the king. So it's like all of white's pieces are really kind of doing what you want for them to be doing in this position. Queen comes to f4, throwing a little spike check in there. King comes over to b1. You see knight up to c7. And then you actually see queen takes b6 here. And it is in this position that black resigns the game. And I think it's pretty clear why. But in case, like, you're wondering, maybe, it seems like maybe black can fight a little bit more. Take you into a possible variation. And this is like by far the best way that black can play. Rook h coming to e8. You see queen to c6 with check. King comes up to d8. You see queen back over because now you're threatening some really nasties with knight to c6. Rook takes e1. Rook takes e1. King goes down to d7. And you have c5. And c5 is threatening a couple things. For number one, you're opening up this file. And also you're opening up things laterally. And I mean, with this rook and this knight, it's pretty dangerous for that to be occurring. So pawn would take c5, and you see queen to c6 with check. King going up to d8, which is the only move, and then queen taking on c5. And you can see that white is up an entire pawn, and they just have basically, the black king just kind of in a box. This move is going to be coming, so it's looking really, really, really nasty for black. So in light of all of that, I mean, black is having to resign this position. There's just not a way to continue to go forward because you can be getting mated here pretty quickly. So don't do that. But that is round 4. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Shock set go for anybody who is coming from Azerbaijan. Merming Salamat Aking Makai Bigan Posan Nanunawod. And it looks like Malakas see Wesley So in this one. So that is all well and good. So I appreciate everybody very much. Makito tayo mamaya, all my people in the Philippines, and I'll see you guys next time.